Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm honored to have Alan Weiner with us, short sale specialist. Want to talk a little bit about the market and where we're going with the market. And so I wanted Alan to come on because he knows all things short sales, but even more than that. And so, Alan, why don't you introduce yourself and just kind of tell us exactly what you do?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Greg, thanks for having me. My name again is Alan Weiner, and I have a company called Short Sales Services. We've been in business for about 14 years. And what we do is we negotiate and process short sales on behalf of sellers who are upside down in their property. We're generally working with listing agents. That's how most of our business comes from. But we do work with some consumers who need help to get started. Um, and we are negotiating with their lenders to get them to accept a lesser amount than is actually owed so that the seller can sell the property and walk away without having any deficiency balance or owing the lender any money at the end of the transaction.
And so, why short sales? Of all the things that you could have gotten into, why did you choose short sales?
So I did at my law firm, we had a law firm, had a title company. Our title company did settlements for a very long time. And back when the market started crashing, back 12 years ago or so, I started doing short sales just to supplement the title business, and the short sale market just took off like crazy. I mean, if you remember back in 2007, 8, 9, I mean the numbers were insane. How many short sales were every transaction was a short sale,
Absolutely.
and it just became a very lucrative business. I really like doing it, helping people out. And then from about 2011, 12 through 18 or 19, it was very steady. It wasn't like it was those prior years, but it was very steady, and we've done well. And then COVID hit, and the world came to an end for everybody. But now that COVID's ending, God willing, we are seeing the market change back again. The Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, where we are, of course, property values kind of stay steady and go up. Now, at the same time, you have a lot of people who are in distress or upside down, or in default. So in other markets, those are automatically becoming short sales. In this market, there's some equity, so people aren't having to do a short sale, even though they are in distress. But we think that it's changing a little bit, and we think the market's going to turn to short sales again. We actually thought it was going to be in the fall, and it has a little bit, but we think it's going to get really crazy sometime soon.
And soon could be as early as what, the first of next year, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, what causes the short sale market to get really nuts is when lenders start bothering their homeowners, their borrowers, saying you haven't made a payment, or you're in default, or the modification we did during COVID is over. And we just, certainly during the holiday seasons, lenders don't bother borrowers. So once they start borrowing the borrowers again, that's when the market's really going to go crazy again.
And so a lot of the borrowers agreed to do forbearance agreements
Right.
with their lenders. What effect are those forbearance agreements going to have on the borrower's ability to pay their mortgage, and what effect is that going to have on the short sale market?
So good question, Greg. Thanks. So when you do when you did the forbearance back, I guess it was almost 20 months ago they started, March of 20. Hard to believe it's been almost 2 years of this nonsense, but nonetheless, lenders are now contacting the homeowners and saying, okay, those 18, 19 months we've put on the back end. Some people think they're forgiven. They're not. They're put on the back end, and the lenders are coming to them and saying, okay, what now? And either you write us a check for 18 months worth of payments, or you start making your regular payments, and you make 3 regular payments on time. And if you do that, then we will add that 18 months to the back end, and things continue on. But if you miss one payment of those three, the program's out and we immediately submit it to foreclosure. So what people forget is that, if you had a $2,000 a month payment, 18 months is, $25,000, $30,000 in principal plus interest that's getting added to the back end. And that might eat up any equity you had or think you had in the property. And that's where a short sale comes in.
And so talk to us about the short sale process. And so what constitutes a short sale, and what's the process of a short sale?
Okay, good. So a short sale basically is when a homeowner owes the lender more money than they can net from their transaction from a sale. So it doesn't matter what the sales price is, it matters what the net is. So if they have one mortgage or two mortgage, again, it doesn't matter, we add them all together. So if a homeowner owes $200,000 with closing costs and everything else, they're probably going to need to sell their property for $220,000, $225,000. And if they do that, they're fine. But if they sell it for anything under $220,000, they're going to be short because you got to pay commissions, got to pay transfer fees, got to pay everything else. So at some point, you're going to get below what you owe the lender. When you get below what you owe the lender, it's considered you have what's called negative equity, and you're a short sale. And remember, even while you're doing the negotiation, interest continues to accrue. So if you're close, it's still probably a short sale because interest is going to continue to accrue. So we have this homeowner that, it can be whether it's $1 or $1 million short on the net, they're short. So they come to someone in Greg's office and they list the property with someone in Greg's office. And then Greg's office reaches out to me and says, Mrs. Jones, we have the listing, but we need you to do a short sale. I will then reach out to Mrs. Jones and say, okay, let's tell me your situation. And it's got to be something going on in her life. The traditional things are death, death, loss of job, illness, divorce, things like that. But other things that are acceptable are my family grew and the house is too small. The neighborhood's changed. I need to go to Florida to help my mother because she's not well. I lost hours during COVID and I can't catch up. My job is now part-time. Anything related to COVID we're seeing is pretty acceptable.
So you're saying acceptable as a hardship, and to be able to write that hardship letter.
Right. People need to write a hardship letter. And I'm going to put the word hardship in quotes because it's not as traditional as it used to be, where it used to be death and illness and things like that. Now lenders are much more lenient. They just want to know what's going on in your life that's causing you to have to sell the property. So once we establish that, I'll talk to Mrs. Jones about that. She'll explain it to me, and then I'll send her a financial package. And the financial package will include questionnaires like how long have you lived at the property? Is it your principal residence? And are there any other liens against the property? Of course, I'll check that out also. And then she'll fill out her monthly budget. I want to know all her expenses and all her income and see if she can really afford the property. If it's a close, then we're okay. If she has a ton of money left over every month, then we're probably going to have a hard time doing a short sale. At the same point, I want to get her bank statements, her tax returns for the last 2 years. And I also want to get an authorization from her so that I can speak to the lender on her behalf. We'll get all that. I will review it. Someone in my office will then submit it to the lender or lenders, and we'll begin the process. At that point, Greg's office will be marketing the property for a buyer. We'll be marketing at what the real estate agent, based on their expertise, thinks is the fair price for the property. We're not going to no one's going to try to steal the property. We're not going to try to give it away. It's going to be sold at a fair price. So an investor might want to get it at a discounted price, and they can put an offer in, but most of that, we're going to have to be pretty close to market price. At that point, when we get an offer, we'll submit the offer to the bank, showing them the net sheet, what they're going to net from the sale, and say, you're going to be short. We want you to let Mrs. Jones walk away without owing you any money. The lender will then do a valuation, either a BPO, which is a broker's price opinion, or an appraisal. if they, whatever they do, they're going to come back with a value. And hopefully the value will be close to what we've listed and sold the property for. If they come back with a value higher, then we're going to need to counter our buyer. And then ultimate goal is to get the lender to allow Mrs. Jones to sell the property without owing her any money, or owing them any money. And that generally takes about 60 to 75 days from the date of contract. So when a buyer comes aboard, they have to be prepared to wait about 2 months.
And so who pays your fee? You're doing all the negotiation. They're going to sign your authorization letter. Does the seller pay you?
No, we're paid through the proceeds of the transaction. So again, if it sells for $200,000, the commissions are 12. The transfer tax to the state and county get paid. All the other closing costs get paid. And then we have an approved amount. We ask the lender for about $5,000 in every deal. We usually end up in the $3,000 range. But it's approved by the lender and it comes off the net. So neither the buyer, the seller, or the agents are coming out of pocket to pay us.
And so who pays the agents?
Again, comes out of the sales price. So when we go to the bank, we're saying we're selling it for 200, but we're only going to have 180 to give you because we got to pay the agents and Alan and everybody else. So you need to agree to take 180, and that's where it goes.
And then, so at best, the bank is going to forgive the homeowner of the negative balance,
Right.
Which constitutes a capital gain. And so what tax consequence, as we sit here now, what are the tax consequences for the seller?
Okay, so back in the day when old guys like Greg and I were doing this a long time ago, the former administrations passed a law that said if you sell your principal residence, that forgiveness of debt, which is what the bank is doing, forgiveness of debt is a taxable event. So if Greg owes me $1 and I forgive it, I'm supposed to send Greg a 1099 for $1. And Greg reports that in his income for $1 and would pay an extra 20 cents in taxes. So if the bank forgives $50,000 to Mrs. Jones, she's going to get a 1099 for $50,000 from Bank of America. Back in the old days, that was forgiven, and the law was if it's your principal residence, you don't have to pay the tax on that. You don't have to report it. That's gone back and forth. It's passed. It's not passed. But there is something called the Insolvency Clause in the IRS. And without getting too much in the weeds, the Insolvency Clause says if the homeowner or the taxpayer's liabilities, the bad stuff that they own, are greater than their good stuff at the time of the transaction, then they are exempt from paying tax. So if you think about it, everyone's biggest asset is their house. If their house is upside down, then they probably have more liabilities than assets. And as a result, they are not going to have to pay the tax because they are going to be considered insolvent for the purpose of the IRS. Now, the purpose of this half hour that Greg and I are doing is not to give tax advice to anybody listening. So strongly suggest anybody speak to their tax preparer. But the general law is it's a taxable event unless you are insolvent. I would say, Greg, I would almost bet that 95%, if not more, of the short sales we do, the people are insolvent and don't have to pay the tax.
And they use the IRS form 982 for that.
Right. Wow. Good job. The other thing that people need to be aware of is how this affects your credit. If I can jump ahead for a second, if I can.
Absolutely.
So your credit will be, when you complete a short sale, your credit will go down somewhere around 70 to 80 points, but it is not a permanent mark on your credit like a bankruptcy or a foreclosure. It'll be reported to the credit bureau as paid and settled for less than the amount owed. So it has a zero balance. So it's not going to show that you have an open balance. It's going to show that you paid it under a settlement agreement and there's no more money due under the account. Now you're going to go down about 70 or 80 points. Now, however, it's going to start going back next week, next month. If you pay your other bills, you're going to start seeing it going back up relatively quickly to the point in about 2.5 years, you can buy another home. And again, Greg and I have been doing this a long time. We've gone full cycle with many borrowers where we've done a short sale for them. The agent has found them a rental that's comfortable for them. 2.5 years later, 2 years later, the agent reaches out to Mrs. Jones and say, okay, Mrs. Jones, your credit should be back up. Let's go find you a home and find you a home that you can buy now.
Yeah, and the guidelines keep changing.
Yes, they do.
I don't know. I think the guideline, the FHA guideline for a short sale now, you said 2.5 years, but I think it's 3 years now. I think they're starting to look at short sales, just like a foreclosure, where it's 3 years. But I'll check on that. But I think I know over probably the last 2 or 3 years, or even longer, those guidelines keep changing.
So the other thing, if someone has military or government clearance, Greg, a short sale generally will not affect that clearance. If you do a bankruptcy or a foreclosure, it will. Generally, it does not. Now, again, I would strongly suggest someone speak to their security clearance people at their work. But generally, the ones I've done, and I've probably done hundreds of them, they do not affect the clearance.
Yeah, a lot of people are nervous about doing short sales because their credit report is checked like once a year, once every 2 years, and if they're not credit worthy, then they lose their clearance. But this doesn't affect
no,
that at all,
because it has a zero balance. It just doesn't show that you owe anybody any money. You're settled it.
And so, in doing a short sale, is a real estate agent required?
Almost always the lender is going to require the property be listed with a real estate agent and be listed on the multiple listing service, because the lender wants to make sure they're getting the best price for the property. So they want to make sure that someone in an office like Greg's, like yours, is going to list the property, put it out there for the public to see it, and let it list for 7 days, 7 straight days on the multiple listing, and then give us the best offer.
Right. And so I do know of some real estate agents that want to negotiate their short sales themselves. What's your opinion on that?
Well, the state of Maryland says they cannot. They can only pass information on. The state of Maryland says they cannot. Virginia and DC, they're allowed to do it. My opinion on it is we're not costing anybody any money. It's what we do for a living. We save time, we'll save effort, and allows people in your office, Greg, to go sell real estate and not be on the phone with the lender. I mean, we are calling the lenders almost every day, and it probably takes somewhere between 15 minutes and a half hour to get through. So we're on hold a lot. So we probably put 30, 40 hours into every short sale dealing with the lender, maybe 20 to 30 hours. So why would it, even if the law allowed them to, why would a real estate agent want to do it? And as a consumer, let the real estate agent do what they do best, which is find your buyer, and let us do what we do best. It's not costing anybody any money.
Right. And so we often have sellers who need to do short sales, or we think that they need to do short sales. They talk to an attorney. An attorney says, let the house foreclose. Why, in your opinion, is that bad advice for a homeowner?
So again, a foreclosure will mess up your credit a lot longer than a short sale. It's much harder to come back from that. And also, there's the social and community aspect of, with a short sale, you are, as a homeowner, you're selling the property at a fair price. Your name is not going in the paper advertised as a foreclosure. You're going to go to a closing, hand over the keys as a gentleman, if you will, hand over the keys. You're not taking there's no loss of pride. And that's the advantage of it. And you're going to come back from it a lot quicker than you will in a foreclosure. And again, it's not costing you any money. The other part of it is you're going to move on your terms. you're not going to come home one day and find your stuff on the street. You're going to move when you're ready to move. When the short sale is completed, you go to settlement at the title company, and they're going to say closing is going to be on Friday at 3 o'clock, and you're going to know you need to move and get your stuff out of there by that point. In a foreclosure, you might be living there, and then one day the sheriff's coming out and taking the property and putting all your stuff in the street. So I really don't know why anyone would rather go to a foreclosure than a short sale. Just to me, it's never made any sense. Now, some attorneys will recommend a bankruptcy versus a short sale or even a foreclosure. And really the only thing a bankruptcy will do, the only time I think a bankruptcy is a good idea is if the homeowner has, it's one of two times. Homeowner has other debts they're trying to deal with, or two, the foreclosure sale date on their property is so close that we don't have time to do a short sale. That probably was within 20 to 30 days. So the only way we could stop the foreclosure and give us time to negotiate the short sale is for the homeowner to file a bankruptcy. Usually they'll dismiss the bankruptcy, but they file it, stops it, gives us time to negotiate it. But remember, if you do have certain bankruptcies, the property still stays in your name. So we get a lot of transactions, Greg, where people have done a bankruptcy and they don't even know, they think it's gone, and they find out 3 years later the property's still in their name, and then they have to do a short sale. So
yeah, they don't realize that they actually included the house in the bankruptcy.
Right, exactly. So a short sale really solves a lot of problems. The other thing, and I'm sure you have a question about it, but I'll touch on it. I'll jump the gun if I can, is sometimes, and again, emphasize the word sometimes, we are able to get people some money to sell their property in a short sale. Now, those of you who might have known the market a long time ago, there was a law that said if you sell your principal residence, you were going to get $10,000 at closing. That went on for a long time. That ended about January or February of 2016. When Barack Obama left office, the next guy,
half a program.
Right. They were giving people money. So now that's gone, but it's a negotiation. So we asked for 10,000 every deal. We're seeing between 0 and 5. And there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to who gets it and who doesn't. We're trying to get at least 5 for every deal, but it's not always guaranteed. So don't, if someone tells you we're going to get you money, and that real estate agent's not telling you the truth. Excuse me. That real estate agent's not telling you the truth.
It's not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed. So we're going to be straight up with you from the beginning. We're going to tell you where the bar's set. We're going to tell you we're trying to get you some money, but there's no guarantee.
How does short sales affect investors and investor properties?
Really, it's almost the same thing. So somebody owns an investment property. The hardships that might be available for them are, I can't find a tenant, or I find a tenant, but I can't cover the rent with that tenant, or I'm sorry, the mortgage, or I can't manage it because I'm moving out of the area, or my former tenant destroyed the property. I don't have $20,000 to go fix it up so I can rent it again. Therefore, it's time for me to just go sell it. At that point, we would just, same way, get a financial statement from the seller, and you market the property the same way.
And the bank accepts those excuses as a hardship?
Absolutely. Banks do not want to do a foreclosure, Greg. As you know, probably as well as I do, that it costs the bank a lot of money to do a foreclosure. 90% of the time they're buying it back at closing. So they have to, maintain the property, winterize it, summer, cut the grass, pay the utilities, pay the water bill, and then put it back on the market. All the while, the copper pipes have been stolen or whatever happens. There was a water leak. So they'd rather just get in and get out. If they can do a short sale, they're much happier. So, and I've been on panels with banks. They're much happier to do a short sale than to do a foreclosure.
Yeah, but
now,
banks
let me before you get to that. One thing I will say is, don't take from that short sales are guaranteed. Short sales are always a privilege, not a right. So sometimes the bank will say, we just don't want to do it. The investor might be a pension fund in Japan, and their position is, we're not doing short sales. We'd rather take the risk on a foreclosure. We're just not doing it.
Right. And we just have to keep in mind that banks are not in business to hold real estate. They're in business to lend money. And so, and so that's the next question. What percentage of the short sales are you getting approved, or are you seeing get approved?
Greg, I'm having a hard time. Something happened technically here.
Yeah, well, you're frozen on my screen.
Is it me or you?
I think it's you. I'm hardwired in, so I think it's your Wi-Fi. I can hear you though.
Let me move around. Hey. I'm having a Wi-Fi issue. Can you hear me now, Greg?
Yeah, I'm good.
You're going in and out. Is the Wi-Fi strong in here?
No, go down to my desk.
Yeah. Let me go somewhere. Hold on one second. Sorry. Is that better, Greg?
Yeah, I can hear you. We're good. I can hear you.
Okay.
The screen is frozen, but I can definitely
So
hear
the question is what percentages get approved? I'd say, we're probably in the 80% range. The ones that don't get approved,
Yeah, Alan, I think you made it worse.
I don't know what happened.
Okay, stay right there, Alan. We're good. Okay.
All right. So the question was what percentage are getting approved, Greg? And my answer is usually about 80%. The ones that don't get approved are usually we can't get the value that the bank wants, or the seller is just not getting us what they need on a timely basis. And as Greg's office and to the finish line faster than they need, more than they want to help. Sometimes they've given up. So we try to push them and get them, hold their hand through the process.
Okay. And all right. And so why are short sales? Just a couple more questions, and I'll get you out of here. Why are short sales such great deals for investors? As you know, I like to buy short sales, but why are they good deals for investors?
Are.
Well, what'd you say?
I don't know that they really are. I think that, like if sometimes you can get a good deal, but you're not going to be able to put any inspection contingencies in there. So I think the reason they're good deals for investors, though, Greg, is because a lot of the properties need a lot of work. And I tell sellers when they sell properties that are short sale, not to put a nickel into it. Don't even throw the trash away. So that sometimes the investor is the only one that's going to come in and buy a property that needs to be, gutted or cleaned or so homeowners might not be interested in a property that needs work, but an investor can come in. And usually when you do that, you can kind of finesse the value a little bit with the bank, because you can say, yeah, it might be a $300,000 house, but because the condition it's in, it's really, 200. And then there's some room for an investor to make money.
Yeah, and I like short sales because we can take pictures of all the deficiencies and send to the bank to justify our offer. And then in most cases, the homeowner is living in the property. So if they're living in the property, the assumption is that the plumbing is working okay, the electrical, the HVAC, those types of systems, the house is livable. So in most cases, it's just a lot of cosmetic problems,
right?
That you've got to renovate. And so I like buying short sales. I've got one or two under contract now. I'm just waiting for the bank to get the short sale approved. Are the BPOs, are they actually going inside of the houses now?
We hope they do. And a BPO, again, is a broker's price opinion. And I call it basically the poor man's appraisal, because the bank doesn't want to spend $400 or $500 on an appraisal. So they'll hire a real estate agent to go do an evaluation of the property. Most of the time, they're supposed to go in the property, but sometimes they don't. So they might come back and give us a valuation of $300,000. And Greg's office will tell me, we can't sell this thing for over 180. There's mold in the basement. There's a hole in the roof. There's a deck fell down. And that's because the agent that did the BPO never went in the property. So then, as Greg was saying earlier, we take pictures, we'll send it to the lender and say, this is not a $300,000 property. This is a 180 property because there's mold in the basement and things like that. And again, when there's mold in the basement or water in the basement, only investors are going to really want to tackle that. A homeowner's not going to want to tackle that.
We love mold. Mold is gold.
Mold is gold. Yeah, because people are scared of it. People are frightened of it. So, and the banks are frightened of it. As Greg was saying, they're not in the business of holding properties. So they do not want a property that has mold in it. That's just liability risk issues written all over it. Real estate agents can't go in and show it. So they want to get rid of it. So mold is gold.
Love mold. Love mold. All right. So two last questions. Number one, we talked about it earlier. Where do you see this market going? Let's say 6 months to a year from now. Where do you see the market going as these forbearance agreements are coming up, and these banks are wanting to now foreclose because of the pandemic, things like that?
I think it's going to get. I think, and I say this hopefully, it's going to get. I think we're going to start seeing a real rush in the foreclosure market. I think people are going to. I don't think that people are going to be willing to start making their payments. A lot of people, as we know, the job force is shrinking. A lot of people are just walking away from their jobs. A lot of people took early retirement because of COVID. So I think that there's going to be a lot of people out there hurting and needing to sell their property. So I think in the next 3 to 6 to 9 months, we should see that. Now, the spring market generally gets busy again and properties appreciate. So it's just a question of what's going to happen to the appreciation. Interest rates have risen a little bit. So that usually brings prices down a bit. But right now the supply is so poor that the demand is things are selling higher than market value. So there was an agent that, a few months ago called me and said, we have on a Thursday or Friday, we have 6 properties we're going to give your office for short sale. And on Monday or Tuesday, she called me and she said, we only have 1. The other 5 sold over listing, and therefore we were able to pay them in full. They no longer were short sales. So I think, again, you would know better than me, Greg, that market seems to have gone away a little bit, wouldn't you think?
Well, it has gone away. The market has softened up a little bit, but we're still in a seller's market. Okay. My agents aren't getting 10, 20 offers on each listing, but they are getting 2 or 3 or 4 offers on their listing. You only need 1.
Right.
And so the market is softening up. I do foresee in the next, say, 6 months, more inventory on the market. And I see the market kind of settling down a little bit. We'll see what the Fed does with interest rates. They keep interest rates where they are or even lower, then yeah, we'll have a lot of buyers wanting to buy and can buy more. And so we'll just have to wait and see. But I don't think that the market is going to be the way it has been within, the last year. I see more inventory, more activity, more people having to sell because they haven't made payments in, say, 18 months.
And the other part, Greg, is during that 18 months, a lot of people haven't paid their condo or association fees also. And they're not as forgiving as a bank. So a lot of the pressure to sell might come from those associations.
From the homeowner associations?
Or the condo association, yes. Because if people haven't paid their mortgage in 18 months, they haven't paid their condo or association fees. So as I said, they're less forgiving. So they might start putting pressure on the homeowners to either come up with some money or we're going to take it to foreclosure.
And that's what's happening, especially in DC, where the condo associations are the superior liens there.
Yeah.
So they're more superior than the tax liens.
Right.
And so what I'm seeing at the auctions, especially in DC, is a lot of the homeowner associations foreclosing on condos, townhouses, places like that, and they're just selling the properties for because they're only allowed to sell the properties for the condo fees. And so lots of investors are buying these properties. Some of them are kind of hard to close on because now you're dealing with the banks.
Yeah, you have to take it subject to the bank.
So title companies are having a hard time, but you can lock those properties up, and some of them you are getting them through the title work.
But my point was, I think that you're going to get to the point where if people haven't made their 18 months of condo or association fees, they're at some point they're going to just say, you know what, I'm getting out of this property. I can't afford it, or it's not worth it. I'm a year and a half behind on my mortgage. I'm a year and a half behind on my condo fees. I don't need it anymore. I'm getting out of it. And I think that's what we're going to start seeing, and that's what we are seeing a little bit of.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
we're definitely seeing that now.
So if you're a homeowner listening to this and watching this, my suggestion is if you are in distress, whether you're upside down or you don't know if you're upside down, deal with it now, because the banks they're not going away. They may have gone away for 18 months, but they're coming back. And if you reach out to somebody, in Greg's office, they can at least look at your value, see what's going on. They can get don't avoid it. If the longer you wait, the worse the situation. The old adage, problems are only going to get bigger. And I promise you that if you attack it early on, we have options. If you call Greg's office or my office 3 days before the foreclosure, we don't have options.
Well, the only option at that point is to file a bankruptcy.
File a bankruptcy, and then you've got other problems. So if you can, we can deal with this again, whether you have equity or don't. But if you don't want to keep your property, you can't afford your property, listen, no one's going to know. We're not the judgment police. We're not judging you. We're going to just do what's best to help you out.
And so we've got one question, Alan. Cynthia's asking, are most of these properties that you see non-owner occupied, or are they owner occupied?
Most of them are owner occupied. But again, as you talked about earlier, Greg, it doesn't matter. But most of them are owner occupied.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. We're normally dealing with owners who are still living in the properties. They're either not paying their mortgage, or they just have negative equity and they have to sell.
The one thing we didn't touch on, and we should, Greg, is because we're seeing a lot of estates. That's estates, E-S-T-A-T-E-S. So whether it's someone who died and owned the property, or they had a reverse mortgage and they died, we again, same thing. We can deal with the short sale. There's no reason for the family to have to pay a nickel to get rid of the property or to let it go to foreclosure. You might want to save mom's good name, even though she's no longer alive. We don't want her name in the paper. We do a short sale, and we can get it cleaned up without costing anybody any money.
Absolutely, we see a lot of those, and we'll see a lot of those.
Yeah.
And don't let the words reverse mortgage scare you. The bottom line is they've got a mortgage on the property. The mortgage is more than what the house is worth. And so in order for you to get rid of the property, you've got to sell it as a short sale.
Right. And usually much easier to do than a traditional short sale. The bank really just wants to see, they want you to sell it for 95% of what they think the value is. So, and they're pretty reasonable. And they'll pay, and they're much faster, because we're not looking at financials, because obviously the decedent doesn't have pay stubs and bank statements.
Yeah, they just want to see a death certificate.
Death certificate, and they want to get rid of it. And again, as I said earlier, banks want to do the short sale. They really do. So again, if you're a homeowner and you're in a situation, reach out and get information, because we can help you.
All right, Alan, you've got the final word there. I appreciate your time.
Great. Always a pleasure.
Knowledge. If people want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. My email is awein555@gmail. That's aween555@gmail.com. Or you call Greg's office and they can put you in touch with me.
Yeah, just give me a call, get in touch with me, and we'll definitely put you in touch with Alan. Alan actually has an office here in my Greenbelt office. So if you guys want to come by here or call him, the investors out there, and I see a lot of names on here. So a lot of you guys are investors. The short sales are just great ways to obtain properties. I like short sales, like I said earlier, because it's not a lot of work involved in the renovation. And you can get them. Banks are, generally speaking, the banks are, they want market value, so as is value, but sometimes they'll take as less as maybe 80% of market value, not after repair value, current as is value. Sometimes they'll take as low as 80% of as is, which really kind of meets our formula on where we buy houses. It's still a negotiation. Bank could come back and say, you know, you're offering us $250,000. We want $300,000. It's a negotiation. You can meet them halfway, or you can stay where you are. You can justify your offer through pictures and comps and things like that. But you can, negotiate. All right, Alan. Thanks
Great.
again. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thanks for having me.
Okay. All right, you guys have a good day. Take care.